Station. Good morning, Corning, here at KBKG More Music 93.5, Corning's hometown radio station. Did you guys want to intro? I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, we just can't get that Vietnam thing out of our head.
Oh, gotcha. You know what's funny about that? Well, it's not funny. I was somewhere the other day, and a guy was eating breakfast. I think it was Hardee's in Park Bluff, and he said something to me, just random. I didn't even know the guy. And he's over, I guess he was kind of venting, and he said, "Did you know these freaking Vietnam veteran hats are made in Taiwan?" And I was like, "Are you serious?" And he showed me, and it really was.
Hey, at least they wasn't made in Vietnam.
Yeah. That's true. That could have been worse, I guess. Guys, the next guest needs no introduction. And we're only going to get the top half of him because the bottom half, he's in his boxer briefs. No, I'm kidding. It is the one, the only, Mr. Coach Dick Walls.
Well, he is in his boxer briefs, isn't he? He had to look down just to make sure.
Just to make sure, yeah. Coach, first of all, it's an honor to have you here. You know I look up to you. You've always been a role model to me. I appreciate you coming. You mean a lot to me, and I know you mean a lot to a lot of people, so they're going to be very ecstatic to hear you on here. Before we get started real quick, JL Honeycutt, is the game at Corning tonight? Yes, it is, JL, and the game will kick off at 7, is that right?
7 o'clock.
Kick off at 7 o'clock tonight at Bobcat Stadium here in Corning. Get there if you can. Kenneth Hill says, "Awesome job, guys. Thank you." And we got a few more comments, but let's get the coach here. Coach, how have you been?
Good.
Doing good?
Most of the time.
Most of the time?
Yeah.
That's good. What are you up to these days? Do you have any hobbies now in retirement? Anything at all that you're doing?
No.
You heard him say yesterday he slept till 10:30 and thought he missed the show.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that is great stuff. Did you really come over here?
Did what now?
Did you really come over here at 10:30?
Well, I didn't come over here, but I did jump up out of bed and jumped around thinking, "Oh crap, I missed the show." And I come into the living room. My wife, I said, "Oh, I missed the radio show." Today's Thursday. So.
At least she didn't give you a hard time. She's very nice about it. She brought you down easy.
She did.
Yeah.
She did. Yeah.
Coach, for those that don't know you, tell us a little bit about Coach Walls in your early childhood, where you grew up at, some of your hobbies, things you did, where you went to school, things of that nature.
Well, that's easy enough. I'm almost where I grew up. I grew up I grew up right in front. I was born just about 4 blocks from here, where the courthouse is.
Yeah.
And I lived where Chad Hovis lives. My dad and all my brothers, we built that house. So I lived 4 blocks that way and 1 block that way. And
now you live across the street from where you're at right now.
I lived right here, and I played in this field right here before this radio station was built.
Wow.
And we played football, all of our brothers, my brothers, and all the kids. This used to be loaded with kids. We played football in the courtyard yard. There wasn't any grass in that courtyard yard because we played football and baseball there. As back what Coach Mark talked about, television, and I remember before television when we listened to radio. So I grew up right here. Matter of fact, when I used to jog all the time.
I remember that.
With my buddies. We used to run through this neighborhood, and when we drove by this vacant lot, I thought, I want to build my house where I grew up. So I bought this lot, and I built my house right where I grew up. So
that's cool.
I'm within 200 or 300 yards where I grew up, right here. So
that's awesome.
This is my hood. Right
I like that. Yeah. This is your hood.
He's the original Boys in the Hood.
That's right. That's right. As what they say these days, the OG.
Yeah, the OG.
Yeah.
You're talking about down at the courthouse playing football and keeping the grass wore down.
Yeah.
Do you want us to go ahead and try to get them to pay you off for keeping that mowed back in the day?
Yeah.
Well, they didn't have to keep it mowed. They sure did.
Hey, ask him. He might know. Hey, he asked Coach Smith earlier, what did you say the name of that?
Oh, yeah. So I've been trying to document some Bobcat football history, even little things like the places they played football at. So we have Bobcat Stadium, which was here. I think Coach Mike said 69 or 68 maybe. Before that, it was Sprague Field, which is in the Huddle Plaza. But before that, I have heard from a couple people, and they couldn't locate it exactly, but they said it was called Hobson Field. Does that ring a bell at all?
Well, before Huddle Plaza, they played football where the golf course is now.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right there, we're across the tracks where the I guess is that old car dealership is, and that
Yeah.
old
Yes.
service station is.
Yeah.
They played football out there back in going way back. But no, I don't remember that, but I've heard of it.
Yeah.
But my earliest days was where Huddle Plaza is. But they did play.
We're going to have to find
across
somebody
the
that knows
tracks.
that.
That's pretty cool. See, I didn't know that. Well, we verified that because someone thought that. They thought that was another place that they had played on that side of town there, on the eastern side of town, I guess you'd say.
They did.
And so that's pretty cool. Now we kind of know at least. That's neat. What was Sprague Field like? Was it just a little bit of land out there at that time and just a big field out there? Was there any buildings around there at that time?
Well, there was. It was. Yeah, it's hard to say. The football field itself was not. It wasn't. We practiced on the football field, okay, and it was more or less like a pasture.
Gotcha.
They didn't have modern day mowing machines. I guess I don't even know how they mowed the football field. Well, there wasn't a whole lot to mow.
They might have had a bunch of goats.
Goats. I was thinking the same thing.
Well, probably about like that. There wasn't a whole lot to mow because I can remember there was big dips and holes. And
Oh, man. A lot
when
of
you'd
rolled
play in-
ankles.
Yeah, when you play a game, there'd be puddles of water in the middle of the field, and
So
wasn't a whole lot of grass. This was pretty. You talk about playing on the grass field. We didn't play on a grass field because there wasn't any grass to play on, and it really. And plus,
They played on the dirt field.
That's right.
yeah, and the
You played
line-
barefooted.
yeah, and the fields were marked off with lime, so that's a lot
Wow.
of fun. And I remember the bathrooms were outhouse. It was an outhouse.
Really?
Yeah, so it was real.
Yeah.
It was sort of real
I don't wait
primitive.
till I got home.
But I remember we'd practice. We'd get on a bus. Well, we would run from the high school was at Central School. All the school
Yes,
was at Central School.
Yep.
And we would run from the Central School out to Sprague Field, out where the Huddle Plaza is now. We'd run out there and practice, and we'd run back to Central School where the locker room was.
So hang on. Wait. You would run clear across town just to go practice?
We'd run from Central School.
It ain't that far, Andy.
No, it's not really how that
That's a little bit of jog now. That's a
Not
little
when you're a
bit of
kid.
jog.
Not when you're a kid. Now, we go try it right now. Somebody's going to die.
Well,
I just think it's so neat though that you.
what you have to understand also, football in the 50s was not like it is when it wasn't really strenuous. When Paul Stovall came here, he really brought football as we know it today. You know, when I was in junior high up until the time Paul Stovall came here, you would go out there and you'd practice for about an hour. We didn't know anything about sprints or any. I remember when Paul Stovall came here and he first brought sprints. We thought we were, it was unbelievable. Generally would go out there and do a few calisthenics and run a few plays, and you'd go in. Nobody would even break a sweat. And when he came here and brought in sprints and calisthenics and all kinds of drills, God Almighty, we thought we'd died and went to hell right there on the field.
Coach,
man.
So it wasn't that big a deal to run out there and run back.
What year did you graduate?
63.
In 1963. Okay. Mm-hmm. So who was the coaches as you went up through the system there?
Well, we had until
Before Stovall, obviously.
In junior high, we had a fellow by the name of Yates. Bill Yates was his name.
Okay.
And then when I was in 10th grade, we had a fellow here by the name of Takis. He was here in my 10th grade year. And then in the 11th grade is when Coach Stovall came here, 11th grade and 12th grade years. And then after Coach Stovall was here, I think probably 5 or 6 years. Then, of course, that's after I graduated. And then after Coach Stovall left, and of course Coach Snow came.
Yeah.
And after Coach Snow, then Coach Campbell. And you know about after that.
Yeah.
But
Coach Carpenter took his place when he left.
yes, Coach Carpenter was here for 1 year.
what I
forgot
thought.
about that. Sure did.
What was, not to take us away from sports, but what was the city of Corning like back when you were growing up?
Oh, gosh. Well, on Saturdays, if you would look down the middle of 2nd Street on Saturdays, it looked like the 4th of July picnic.
Wow.
You know, it was just crowded with people. Starting at noon, the streets would just be packed with people coming in from Dado and MacDougall and Noble and Peach Orchard and Success, and they'd be here from noon till midnight, and there'd just be people packed. I mean, just all day long. It was just, it was all
Just like Branson.
really, it was just busy. It was really an exciting place back in those days. It was, the people walking the square, walking down the Hop Alley, and had the pool halls and little cafes and the theaters, and it was really exciting all day long on Saturdays. And all the businesses were downtown. We had several 4 or 5 grocery stores, and had several barber shops and several cafes and 2 or 3 pool halls, and there were a lot of businesses, 2 or 3, 4 or 5 service stations, and a lot of businesses. And of course, is when Walmarts and of course then when the Huddle Plaza opened up there, that moved things out away from Corning. So but downtown Corning was a really, really busy place. It was exciting.
I think when I was a kid, the movie theater and the pool hall across the road was the only thing that was left.
Yeah, that was about it. No, that was exciting. People got ready to go to town at noon, and it was going till midnight on Saturday night.
Did you spend a lot of your time in the arcades down there?
Grew up in an arcade. Well, see, my dad, that's how he made a living.
He invented Donkey Kong.
My dad, he made a living building pool tables, and he owned a pool hall. I grew up shooting pool, standing on a wooden soda pop carton like you put soda.
Oh, yeah. I used to go help little Louie put some of them together. Yeah.
But I wasn't tall enough to shoot, so I'd stand on a soda carton to shoot pool. No, I grew up in a pool hall arcade.
So if I'm ever somewhere some night and there's a pool table and Coach Walls is there, you're not going to hustle me because I already know you're a pool shark. You ain't going to hustle me.
Well, I'm not that good, but I've got 2 brothers that can flat. Years ago, I've had 2 brothers that played football at Arkansas State. Marshall was a fullback and Dave was a linebacker, and they both made all-conference. And made all-conference the same year. I can recall they had a snooker tournament down there. Big 75, 80 guys lined up to play in the snooker tournament down there. And when they got to the finals in the snooker tournament, David and Marshall, my brothers, played each other for the championship.
Oh, wow.
And David beat Marshall.
I bet he never heard the end of that.
Hey, those pool tables are all over the country.
Yeah, they are.
I don't remember where I was, but it was it was a few years ago, and it was a long ways from Corning. Walls Pool Table Company.
That's pretty cool.
We sold them probably all over Arkansas, Tennessee, Oklahoma, Missouri. Yeah, there are literally thousands of them.
Yep.
David Marshall made a good living. They were playing football at ASU. They made a good living around down Truman and Mark Tree playing pool on the weekends. But anyway.
We got a little bit of social media engagement here. Dalton Hollingsworth says, "Gosh, I love seeing Coach Walls."
The hammer.
The hammer. Carla Whitman says, "I just love that Coach Walls. He is a great, great man." So Coach Walls is my hero. I looked up to him like he was my grandpa," said Dalton. And Carla said, "Same. He's a great role model." He sure was. I wouldn't be the person I am in my life without him," said Dalton. And Carla says, "Hey, I need some Coach Walls to give me some coaching tips for flag football," she said. So,
Who said that?
Carla Whitman.
Andy, I had
Carla Whitman.
Oh, okay.
I had Coach Walls his first year back to Corning, or he might have been his first year to coach Corning. I had him in 9th grade. Well, I seen him years later at Video Playhouse one day. I was probably in my mid-30s maybe. He come up and hugged me, like he always does, and he said, "You know what?" He said, "If I practice teams today like I did when y'all were in 9th grade," he said, "I'd be in prison right now."
That's probably the truth. I'm going to tell you something. I didn't want to get out of chronological order here, but when we was younger in junior high, if we could just survive Coach Wall's off-season program, we could do anything in life. We could go to the military. You could put – it didn't matter what you put us up against. You were notorious for that, but in a good way. You made men out of us, honestly. You really, really did. And I remember times, I think I've told you this before, you would have us doing push-ups there in the locker room. And you would slowly make your way around. And all of us wanted that hallway, because if you got in the hallway, when Coach got over here, a little bit of his view was blocked, and you could take a break. So you really did. You made men of us, though, and I want to thank you for that, because your off-season program was nothing like anything I've ever seen before.
Well, you heard what Mike said. I love getting his players.
Exactly.
They were in tip-top shape and ready to go.
Is that something you took pride in, I guess?
Well, a couple things. If you remember, I used to tell you, just before you die, I'm going to give you a break.
Yeah.
I do remember that. You're right. I do remember that.
But I did know that, number one, that two things. I knew that you wanted to be a good player. I think I remember when I used to ask you how many, maybe with your group, who wants to be average?
Yeah.
And nobody ever raised their hand. And then I'd ask, who wants to be a good player? Well, everybody wanted to raise their. And, of course, if you want to be good, you've got to do more than what you just got to do more than what most people want to do. And so, and of course, I knew that you could be better. I knew that you could be better than you knew you could be. In order to be better, you got to do more, and you got to do more than you even knew you could do.
Yeah.
And so, when I asked you to do those extra things to go further than even you knew you could do, and you wouldn't die, that I knew that you would get better. And after a while, you found out that you weren't going to die. And
by golly, we thought we was sometimes.
Yeah, there were some days I was a little worried.
I'm sure you did. I'm sure you did. And but that was all about developing confidence to find out that, I am pretty dadgum tough. I didn't know I could do this. And I used to throw you in the bull of the ring and let you beat the crap out of each other.
Mm-hmm.
You come out of it and you go, wow, I didn't know I was that tough, Yeah. And that was all about developing confidence and finding out you could do more than you thought you could do. And that's what that was all about, because there was going to be a time when I was going to throw you into the ball game and put you on the line. And there's going to be a time when you were going to really be tired, and you were going to be sweating, and you were going to be thirsty, and it was going to be right down to the wire, and you were going to have to reach back and get that extra stuff that you were doing when you were doing those push-ups, and you thought you were going to die.
Yeah.
And you were going to have to use that. And so that's what that was all about. And there were many times when we did use it in those ball games. So that's what that was all about, was helping you to find out you could be a whole lot better than you thought you could be.
Yeah.
That's what that was all about. Because I knew you could be, and I knew that's what you wanted to be.
If we could, I'd like to go back. Can you tell us about your playing days, the success that maybe you guys had, the positions you played, and some of your memorable moments of your playing days?
Well, when I was in high school, football at Corning, and when I was in high school, was not at a real good place. It wasn't at a good place until Paul Stovall came here. And we had not won any ball games to speak of until Paul Stovall came here. When I was in 10th grade, I think we won 2 ball games maybe. When I was in 11th grade, we won 1 ball game. And when I was in 12th grade, we won 5 ball games. And then after that was Stovall had been here 3 years. Then they started to win. And after that, the winning
continued,
kept on going.
Laid the foundation.
What position did you play, Coach Walls?
Well, believe it or not, I was a quarterback.
Really?
I do believe it.
Here's
I do believe it, baby.
Tom Brady is not the GOAT. Dick Walls.
If you listen to Truman Moore, he'll say, "Well, he completed a lot of passes, but most of them went to the other team." And that's it. And he was probably right, because I wore glasses back then, even.
Oh, really?
And I could see, but I couldn't see all that good. And when I see
He's colorblind.
I could see somebody was wide open.
Somebody's open. Huh? That's great. Did you guys pass a lot back then?
No, probably too much.
He had a high pass. He had a high completion.
Yeah.
We passed more than what we did under Coach Mike, and we'd throw maybe, I don't know, 7-8 times a ball game, something like that.
Yeah.
Like
So you
that.
threw 7 interceptions a ball game.
Yeah, I had a pretty good completion record. Yeah, but
Pass completion was 98%.
yeah, but and where was I? But anyway, after I left, Corning football really got on a roll, and
it sounds like you guys laid the foundation and hung in there and had a good senior season. It sounds like too.
Yeah,
5
we played
wins.
500. After that, things really got on a roll. Good, real good. Won several championships. I had my younger brothers playing, Marshall and David. Both of them were all state and played in all-star games. And Truman Moore was all-state and played in all-star games. We had a lot of real good players that came along after that.
Do you remember Teddy Barnes?
Yes, I do remember Teddy Barnes. How'd you come up with his name?
I don't know. Someone told me about that one day. It stayed right up there.
I did, didn't I?
It stayed right up there. I didn't forget it.
Teddy Barnes was one of my players at Lepanto when I first coached at Lepanto. Teddy Barnes was a little squirty bit kid, lived out at Spear Lake outside of Lepanto, poor as Job's turkey.
What year was that, Coach Walls? Do you remember?
That would have been 1967. Teddy 67. And had a little brother named Dean and had another little boy named Gary Wright, and they were all so poor.
I've heard Jerry talk about Teddy Barnes.
Jerry
Davis.
Yep. They lived in a house out there, and the windows were knocked out. Chickens running around the yard, and but they, when we coached down there, they came out for football. And bless their hearts, they were so poor. They come out to play, and toughest kids I've ever seen in my life. They were tough. They fought each other. They beat each other up. They were just.
So anyway, they did for fun.
Yeah, but they were real good football players. Anyway, Teddy ended up playing for the Razorbacks. Mm-hmm. He played. There's a picture on the wall, or was on the wall, in Frank Roll's office, and I'm sure it's still up there. They were playing Texas A&M, and they called it the miracle catch or whatever. He strung out catching the ball in the end zone to beat Texas A&M and win the ball game.
I've seen that highlight before.
But anyway, that's Teddy Barnes. I stopped in there. Well, it's been 10 or 12 years ago. I'd come through Lepanto, and this Barnes Auto Body Repair, and I stopped in there, and I walked in. I thought, well, maybe I'll get to see Dean, his brother, and I saw somebody working on a car over there, and I walked over and I said, hey, I hollered to somebody, and old boy crawled out and had a big old beard, and it was Teddy. But anyway, yeah, Teddy Barnes. He's one of the better football players that I ever coached.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Coach Walls, growing up, who were some of your role models?
Oh, gosh, I don't know. Well, the person that started football for my family was my oldest brother, Louis. There were 14 Wallaces that played football at Corning High School. And my brother Louis started all that.
Wow.
Louis was a real good athlete. Louis could play football, baseball, basketball. Louis played football at Washita. And Louis was one of a kind. He was a rough and tough character. Yep. There was only one Louis. But Louis was a real good football player. So I guess he was he could be a good guy, but he could be a tough guy too. He was sort of a mixed character. But I guess my role model would have been my oldest brother, and of course my dad.
Right.
Was my role model. My dad was one of a kind too. He was.
Now, was your dad and what was your dad's name?
Lute.
Was him and Tittle brothers?
My dad and Tittle were brothers.
Yep.
Yeah, and they had another brother named Chet, and they had a sister, my Aunt Betty Baxter. But my dad was my role model. My dad was not an educated man. He went to the 7th grade. He said he went to the school 11 years, but he only made it to the 7th grade.
That's pretty good. They liked him so much they decided to keep him.
Hey, he probably dominated in sports in those later years.
Yeah, he said he stayed in 2nd grade 3 years. So,
oh goodness,
but he loved us. He followed us through football, and he thought we were the greatest thing that ever was. And he would always exaggerate. And he'd talk about our football. If we ran 2 touchdowns, he'd tell we run 5. You know.
Yeah.
And I remember my older brother Ronnie. He was an all-state football player. He was a pastor. He was a preacher. And we'd sit around. There'd be people sitting around the pool hall, and my dad would be telling about the football the previous night. My brother would be there, who was a preacher, and Dad would be telling these stories, and he'd always exaggerate, and he'd get you to agree with it. He'd say, "Well, did you see old David last night? He threw that pass, and I bet you it was 50 yards long. Well, maybe it was 20.
Yeah.
And he'd say, "Ain't that right, so-and-so?" Well, my brother was a preacher, and then he'd try to get you to help him tell a lie. And he'd say, he threw that pass, I bet it's 50 yards. He'd say, "Wasn't that right, Ronnie?" Well, Ronnie's a preacher. Ronnie tried to get him to tell a lie.
Yeah.
Ronnie go, "Oh." He'd say, "Daddy, don't make me
do that to me.
Let me tell a lie. I'm a preacher."
That's funny.
But anyway, my dad was my role model, I guess, and my older brother. Yeah.
Coach, did you always want to be a coach? Whenever you got out of school, was that something you wanted to do? Kind of take me back to that time.
Didn't have a clue. No, I got into coaching by accident. I was fixing to graduate from college. I was going to school at Arkansas Tech. A friend of mine was going to Lepanto to apply for a job teaching over there, and I was home here at Corning on the weekend. And he called me up. He said, my friend was living over at Marlton, Arkansas, and he said, "I'm going to drive over to Lepanto to apply for a job." He said, "I'll come through Corning and pick you up and you ride over there with me." I said, "Okay." So I rode over with him to Lepanto, and I was sitting out in the lobby like I'm here, and the superintendent come out 30, 40 minutes later, and we visited, and he said, "What are you doing next year?" And I said, "Well, I've got another semester of school, and I'm going to go back and play another year of football, and then I'll probably end up going to Vietnam." He said, "Well, could you graduate this summer?" I said, "Well, yeah, I could." He said, "Well, I've got a teaching job and a coaching job open here." He said, "If you graduate this summer," he said, "I'd hire you to teach and coach here next year." And he said, "If you teach or coach, you'd be deferred. You wouldn't have to go to the Army." I said, "I don't know." I said, What's the job?" He said, "Teaching junior high social studies." And I said, "How much it pay?" And he said, $5,000. I said, "Whoa, $5,000?" I said, "Man, yeah."
Count me in.
So he hired me right there on the spot.
Wow.
And I said, "I don't know anything about social studies." And I said, "But I can wing it." He said, "I'll try." And so he hired me to help my friend. He hired me to help him coach. And so I went back to summer school and didn't go back that last semester. And that's how I got into teaching and coaching.
$5,000.
Big bucks, you bet.
Big money back
Drove
then.
a school bus.
It'd be hard to make it on that now, wouldn't it, Danny?
A little rough. Be a little rough.
I love it.
Take it to Tunica and you triple it, maybe a little bit.
Yeah, I know.
You like this, Andy. I had that $5,000 pay, and boy, I just went cry. I said, "Oh my gosh, I got to go buy me a new car." So I went out here to the Chevrolet place.
Yeah.
Bought me a brand new 1967 Impala. Had fender skirts put on it.
Nice.
Fender skirts, and had some the spinner hubcaps.
Yeah.
$3,600.
Wow. That was a tugboat, too.
1967 Impala.
That's awesome.
What color was it?
Beige, tan, beige, 3,600.
I can see Coach down 2nd Street down there by Hop Alley just jamming to some, I don't know, BB King something back then. And
that car cost you $63,000 now.
yeah, you should have held on to that one, Coach.
My bring home pay was $399 a month. My car payment was $122.
Wow. Wow. Were you a single man back then, though?
Was a what?
Was you a single man at that time?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so yeah, see, he can make it.
Yeah.
Coach, I want to mention a couple of these people that's tuned on here with us again. We got some more people. Sandy Anders says, my only remembrance of the I guess she means field at Huddle Plaza was when Governor Rockefeller flew into there on a helicopter and made a speech. I did not know that. It was early grade school, and the school talk, all the kids over there to see him. She also says Coach Walls turned so many kids' lives around. He spent a lot of time making kids feel good about themselves, and got them on the right path. I have never heard anyone say anything bad about him. And Sandy, I absolutely second that. Scott Miller says big love for Coach Walls.
Thank you to both of y'all. I had Sandy's boys in school, and had Scott's boy in school. Scott's boy was, Scott, his daddy. Scott was one of my players.
Yeah.
Good player.
Now, guys, that's all good things that y'all are saying about him. Now, I want to mention something you may not know, and don't. He can't come across here, and if he does, y'all. I heard that you were. This is just a story, so it's just a rumor. Maybe it's not true. Heard you were kicked off your junior high team for smoking. Is that true?
Basketball.
Okay.
Basketball. Yeah.
Tell us that story.
Well, I was at the State Theater, and I had me a Camel, non-filtered, and Coach Yates was there, and I had that baby lit up real good. And best I remember, I used to take pride, and I could blow real good smoke rings.
Yeah.
And I had that baby lit up real good, and I was blowing those smoke rings, and I happened to look down where they were selling popcorn and sodas, and I turned and looked, and Coach Yates was looking right at me. Oh, and I just sort of dropped that cigarette, and he said, "You might as well go ahead and finish it, Walls." And I just melted right there.
Oh, that's awesome.
And he went down and sat down, and I went down and sat down beside him, and I ain't kidding you guys. I cried like a baby. I begged that man. He was trying to watch a movie. He said, "Walls, I'm trying to watch the movie." And I begged him. I said, "Please." But anyway, he said, "Come back and talk to me Monday." And I went back and talked to him Monday, and he said, "Nah, you just go ahead and just forget about that." And he didn't let me come back. And so I just kept on smoking.
He probably knew that at that time he wasn't going to let you back. He just wanted you to think that.
Yeah.
That is pretty funny. Coach Mike
But I wasn't the only one. My younger brother David got kicked off too.
Oh, way to throw him under the bus, Coach.
We all smoked.
Coach Mike told us a story earlier a little bit about you had an opportunity to go coach at Piggott.
I did.
And then I guess it's true that he actually kind of lassoed you from that.
That's real funny how it happened. Once again, I'd coached at Lepanto and I'd coached at Mountain Home. Then I went back to school, to graduate school, and got a degree in rehab counseling, got a degree in high school counseling, got a degree in secondary administration. I'd been a high school principal. I'd been out of coaching for several years, and I was working in Piggott as a counselor. Kicked back in my office, coat and towel on, no sweating. Just all I had to do is sit around, smoke cigarettes, and drink sodas. Didn't have to do nothing. I was sitting there, and the phone rang one day, and it was Mike Smith. Mike and I had been driving back to Fort Jonesboro, going to college at night, and he said, "Got an offer for you." Oh, let me back up. But just a couple of weeks before that, Ed Winberry was the head coach at Piggott, and we used to visit all the time. And he came in my office one day, and he said, "I've got a assistant coaching job, junior high coaching job." And he said, "Would you be interested in it?" And I said, "No." And he come back 2 or 3 times. And finally I said, you know what? I might do that just for the heck of it. I hadn't coached in 8 or 9 years. I said, that may be fun just to go ahead and do that. And so finally I agreed to it, signed a contract. Well, so I told Mike about it. Well, whatever it was, 3 or 4 weeks later, Mike called me up. He said, you're going to coach there at Pickett? I said, yeah. And he said, I want you to come over and coach at Corning, not Pickett. I said, well, I've already signed a contract over here. He said, no, I want you to come over here. I said, well, I don't know. Let me think about it. And so he called me back again in a couple of days, and he said, what do you think? I said, I don't know. He said, well, I want you to come over here and coach. He said, here's the deal. He said, if you'll come over here and coach, he said, in 2 years, Coach Kimbrell's going to retire, and Mr. Brown's going to be superintendent, and you can have his assistant principal's job. You'll only have to coach football 2 years. And then you can have assistant principal's job, which is pretty good.
Sure, yeah.
Jump in pay. And so I said, okay, I'll do that. So I told Edwin Brass, I'm not staying here. I'm going to Corning. Then a couple of days later, Mike called me back. He said, I forgot to tell you. He said,
We know where this is going.
He said, I forgot to tell you, you got to coach 7th grade girls basketball. He said, you got to coach 7th grade girls basketball. So I just hung up on him. So he called me back later, and he said, okay, you don't have to. He said, We'll give it to Ronnie Burns.
Yeah, he said he can't remember how he got out of that.
He said, we'll give it to Ronnie Burns.
Oh, that's funny.
And so that's how I got back into coaching. Well, I came back over and I was planning on coaching junior high football for 2 years and taking the principal's job. Well, life takes funny turns. I got out there with you guys. Bart was on that first team. And guys, that's where I should have been all along. Yeah. It's funny how life takes the path that it does. I got out there and I was at home, Andy.
We had a good team that year too.
Yeah, we had a good team, and I was at home. I knew this is where I'm supposed to be. I loved every. I just
had a passion
loved
for it.
every bit of it.
He had the knee socks, the black
tube
shorts,
socks,
and the
yeah.
white T-shirt.
I love it. Any headbands or
Every
anything?
day. Every once in a while.
I had them socks up there.
Yeah.
But every day I went home, I just sat in a chair and smiled. So I stayed there for 25 years, I guess, or whatever.
Speaking of that, is it true that you actually had an administration opportunity, an administration job from Albert Brown, and you kind of turned that down to actually keep coaching?
Turned it down 2 more times.
Wow.
Turned it down, and they come back a year or 2 later. The guy they hired left, and he offered it to me again. I said, nope. And then another time, they offered it to me 3 times. No, yeah, and it was about a $15,000-$20,000 raise too.
A lot of money.
Yeah.
I think that speaks volumes right there
Yeah,
about you.
exactly.
I knew where I was supposed to be. I thought, when I really thought about it, I said, I knew I had about, 20 years or so to go before I would retire. And I got to thinking, for the next 20 years, what do I want to do? What can I do, and what do I want to do that I can live with and like and enjoy and go home every night and feel like I'm ready to get up and go back and do it again tomorrow? And I knew what that principal job was like.
Yeah.
And I also knew what I was really like doing, what I was doing. And I weighed against what the money is. I said, is it worth 20 years? Is the money worth it? I said, no, I'll sacrifice the money for the enjoyment.
Yeah.
Getting to play football with those little 13, 14-year-old kids. I got to play football for 20 years.
Yeah. It's awesome.
I guess I went to work like this every day. Went to work out there with my T-shirt and shorts. and got to play football.
You didn't
every
wear
day.
the loafers back then.
Well, I didn't. Yeah, I know. And got paid for it.
Yeah.
And got to hang out with some 13, 14-year-old kids and play with.
Hey, when you love your
Change their
job,
lives.
that means a lot more than money.
Got to cut up with you guys and act silly and pull jokes and play with y'all. No, I was.
Run us to death.
Yeah. Work us to death.
Yeah, I loved that. I used to just giggle when I see y'all puke.
Oh yeah. He was
That's when
enjoying
we
it.
thought we were done. 10 more boys.
No, yeah.
Like, oh my
I love
God.
that. Yeah, that's sadistic.
Hey, I tell you what though, we were in shape. No
Did
doubt
y'all
about it.
ever have to do duck walks?
Oh yeah,
Yeah. Oh Lord.
bear crawls.
Yeah. Remember those two? Yeah. Matter of fact, my thighs are hurting right now just hearing you say that.
My thighs are hurt from sitting on this wooden stool for 16 hours. What about you, Mark?
I can't feel mine.
I can't either. I can't feel my legs.
You know, another philosophy I had about pushing you guys that hard. I knew y'all were playing against guys your own age, okay? You were playing against 13-year-olds and 14-year-olds. And my philosophy was, well, if your 13-year-olds and 14-year-olds are playing against each other, that's equal, okay?
Right.
Now, if I can get 14-year-olds to be more like 15-year-olds, that'll be an advantage.
Sure.
A 15-year-old, that's, playing against a 14-year-old. So I really did think if I can get these guys to be more like 15-year-olds body-wise, and not only physically but mentally, and I did push you all to the point where you were really more like 15-year-old than 14-year-old.
18-year-olds. That's
Yeah,
what we were
really.
like.
It's just like, I'll give you an example. When my grandson Casey and Jake Kegley and Zach Brown and all that bunch were playing, we went over to Batesville and played their Southside team.
Mm-hmm.
And that bunch over there, of course, Casey and them they were sort of advanced anyway. That was a real good bunch of kids. They played against that bunch. And Casey and them come over to the field and they said, Coach, those kids out there on the field are crying. Our bunch had beat up on them so bad that they literally were crying. Well, point I'm making is our bunch were so much advanced, and you all were too. I believe you probably would tell me you played in games when the people across from you could tell they were beat they were beat
Mentally and
submission,
physically.
and they were beat in submission. They'd given up.
Yep.
You felt so much physically superior to them that they were beat in submission, and that's because you had done so many push-ups, and so many bear walks, and that you were physically superior to them, and that wasn't by accident.
And to that,
every bit of that.
And to that point, I felt like, I don't know about y'all's team back then, but I felt like our team got better as the game went on.
Oh yes.
I think the fourth quarter was like that was our time. That was our moment. I know you probably remember we had a game. I think it was at EPC, and we ran the same play the entire fourth quarter.
We're coming.
And they never stopped it. I mean, literally, you didn't call anything different. And we milked the entire fourth quarter away, but. It's that off season. You made a man of us, and we were ready. They were wore down.
They were beat into submission. We're coming at you, and there's not anything you can do about it because you were beat into a pulp.
Yep.
And that was earned by pushing that concrete. Every bit of it.
We beat Greene County Tech that year 8-6, and they had Verl Mitchell, which went on to play for Arkansas Razorbacks.
Yeah,
that's
big time.
That was one of the three you mentioned earlier, and you were talking to, I think, to Coach Mark on some particular play that he could recall.
Yeah.
I can recall three that really stand out in my memory, and one of them was the Greene County Tech play when they were undefeated. They had Verl Mitchell, who played for the Razorbacks.
Brandon Roach was their quarterback.
Yes, he was. Outstanding player.
Good quarterback.
And Michael Haggard, Chad Watson, he was falling backwards, and he lobbed past to Michael Haggard. Michael Haggard went all the way for a touchdown. Yep. We beat him 8-6. Is that right, Bart?
8-6.
And the other play
awesome.
that I remember, later on when James Peterson and Mikey Crowdlow and all that bunch were playing Newport, and they were on the move down the field to score to beat us. and they had a big old tall tight end, about 6'4", and they had been throwing to him. But instead of throwing to him, they threw it back over to the other side, and James Peterson intercepted it on about the 2-yard line, went about 98 yards for a touchdown, and won the ball game.
That's awesome.
And the other game, which probably one of you all can remember this, we were playing Hoxie in overtime.
Oh, good Lord, yeah.
We were playing Hoxie in overtime.
Double overtime.
And we threw a pass out to this kid. He was out in the flat on about the 2-yard line maybe. And the pass was completed. The kid made the catch, and the defender made a beautiful, beautiful tackle. I mean, nose up, squared up, one of those that it would went up, but you couldn't hardly make any yardage with it because it was squared up. And I remember looking, I said, oh no, he didn't make it. This kid's a 9th grader. Never would have thought this kid's a 9th grader. I could not believe it. Reached out with the ball and held it across the goal line. I thought, how did he know to do that? I didn't even know that you could reach across with the ball. And that kid was Andy Earls who did that. And the referee went, touchdown.
See, dude, you was an All-American.
No, I didn't.
Two coaches.
But I do remember that game so well. And what I loved, Coach, about I remember every detail about that game. Then we had a triple overtime game at Pocahontas that year that we lost. That was a heartbreaker. So we've been on both. You remember the good and the bad. But what I loved about you is we didn't think that you were going to let us. We loved to pass. And we didn't think you were going to let us do that because obviously up at senior high it was just 3 yards and cloud of dust. Man, you let us air it out.
Yeah.
You did. You let us. I remember Zach Prater. We went to Gosling or somewhere, and Prater, I think, had 15 completions, 20, whatever it was. And, boy, that was a fun night.
Down at Gosnell, I can't remember. It may have been. You always rain used at Gosnell.
I'm glad it didn't rain. Hey, it was almost going to rain the other night.
You may know, Andy. I think you probably have the all-time catch record. How many passes did you catch that night?
It was a fun 12 that night. That was a lot of fun that night. That was a lot of fun.
I know. I remember we hardly
do what?
Oh no, I wasn't very good at
football. No. I just Zach was. We had a really good quarterback, good line, and you let us air it out. You did. To your credit, you let us air it out.
I remember we hardly ever threw, and I knew because chances are in junior high when you throw a pass, that's just a loss down, But Andy could catch, and then Zach could throw.
Yeah, he could.
And the deal was, if you're watching college and the pros, of course, quarterbacks can drop it in. They can drop it anywhere they want to, but they don't have to. What they do pretty well anyway, they throw it long and high, and the receiver gets it. Mm-hmm. That's his job. He just goes.
Got a 48-inch vertical.
And that's pretty well what we had with Andy. I'd tell the quarterback, just throw it high and long, and Andy will go get it. And a lot of senior high kids don't even know that. If the quarterback doesn't throw it in their proximity, they just don't have the.
You see that a lot too.
Yeah. They just don't have the wherewithal that they got to go get it.
Yeah.
And not only got to go get it, they got to go get it and maybe take it away from somebody too.
Right.
Yeah. It's just that fighting spirit to go get the football. Well, Andy had that in junior high school. And Zach could just throw it up in the air, and if it was over here, Andy would go get it over there. If it's over here, he'd go get it over there, and he'd take it away from somebody. But he had that natural, and I'll brag on him. He did. He had that natural.
I brag on him all the time.
Well, I would brag on him more, but he didn't bring any donuts. So.
That's right. I had one job, and I failed.
That's it. I'm forgetting that job.
Hey, Coach.
He almost left because you didn't.
I know he really did. We had to drag him back in.
We're going to step aside from football for just a minute.
You bet.
How did you meet your wife?
Yeah.
That's a story. Do you know, Mike?
I don't know either. I'm interested in this one.
This is a long story.
That's okay. We got time.
She and I dated in high school. She's a Piggott girl.
We got till 7 o'clock.
She's a what?
She's a Piggott girl.
Oh,
I didn't know that.
Coach Walls.
Let me tell you that she's a Piggott girl.
Yeah, wasn't that a no-no back then?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Hey, he converted her.
Oh yeah.
We met initially we met. I didn't date in high school. We were poor. Okay, we really were. We didn't have a car that would run, so I couldn't date.
Yeah.
And but anyway, we met at a little local drive-in out here, and we double dated some in high school. Okay, for 3 or 4 months. Then after I graduated from high school, I went away to college at Russellville, and she went away to Memphis and went to college. So we didn't say that was it. And 10 years later, we hadn't seen each other in 10 years. 10 years later, through a circumstance, we found out about each other. And we got back together 10 years later.
Wow.
And got married. We've been high school sweethearts.
Yeah.
Went different directions. 10 years later, got married, and we had our 49th anniversary about a week ago.
Well, that's awesome.
Congratulations, man. That's all. It's awesome that you remembered that too. How many years and all that too. Yeah. On live TV.
He's not that old yet.
We don't have to edit that one. So
Yeah.
that's awesome. So a Piggott girl, and you got her to move here to Corning.
Yeah.
We got a lot of salesmen as coaches
We
back in the day.
We do. You heard Coach Mike when he was talking about his wife. He said his family swam together with them, and he was 14 and she was 12, and he knew she wasn't old enough to date, and he told her, he said, "I'm gonna marry you someday." And he said when she got old enough to date, he broke up with his girlfriend he dumped her and started dating Charlotte.
Really?
Yeah, that's what he said.
Really?
Yes, sir. Coach, here's some more stuff. Dalton Hollingsworth says, Sandy is such a great person. Love her so much. Corey Godwin. Corey was a heck of a player, by the way. Corey Godwin said, I always said Coach Wall specialized in convincing a 105-pound eighth grader that he was the toughest, baddest person on the field. Whether he was or not, they would go all out. I think that sums it up pretty good right there.
I think it does, too.
I think that's true. Yeah. I think it hits it right on the head. I really, really do. Yeah. We've asked everybody here today, so we're going to ask you too. Who was your celebrity crush growing up? Did you have a celebrity crush back then growing up?
You mean like
someone you liked, you thought was attractive?
Like a movie star or something like that.
You mean
Miss Walls isn't watching. I hadn't seen her, so you're good.
did I have a celebrity crush? Oh gosh, I don't know. I didn't get to go to movies.
Andy's was Richard Simmons.
No.
I didn't get to go to movies until I was 15 years old, so I don't know. My folks were Pentecost. They didn't believe in going to movies.
Wow.
I was 15 years old before I went to movies. Didn't get to date. So all I ever got to do was just play football at the courtyard.
Sounded like his wife was a celebrity crush.
That's what it was. Did they know you were smoking back then?
I did snook around and smoke. Prince Albert even rolled in. Oh, gosh, I don't know. Probably Marilyn Monroe.
There you go. There you go. You can't go wrong with that.
No.
Hey, you've got a lot of knowledge up there, a lot of memory, a lot of history of Corning Bobcat football. You told us three games that you remembered, but is there any other memories out there that really just jump out to you? And whether you were coaching, playing, or whether you were not playing at all, is there any memories that really jump out Corning Bobcat football?
About Corning Bobcat football. That really stand out?
Yeah, any of the games that you can recall that, whether it was back when you played or watching, coaching?
Oh, gosh, almighty.
You've been through so many of them, I know.
Ooh, let me think. There's got to be some of them.
We already got his top three.
We did get the three that he remembered,
Both me and you were involved in those.
Those three, yeah, you were.
That's an honor. That's an honor to me.
Those three big plays. I guess one of the, probably one of the most unbelievable games that I can recall involved my younger brother. Yeah. My younger brother, David, when he was a senior, My brother was a center.
Mm-hmm.
We were playing Batesville, and Batesville was ranked. First of all, Batesville was a class higher than Corning, and they were ranked in the state.
Yeah.
And we went to Batesville to play them, and my brother David was a center. Well, I can't recall the reason why for sure. Coach Stovall, for that game, moved him to quarterback. And David had never played quarterback in his life.
Wow, a center to quarterback. Wow.
And the first thing you have to remember about David was pretty multi-talented. He could do a lot of stuff. But anyway, he moved him to quarterback. And we went to Batesville. In that game, David threw 2 touchdown passes, ran a touchdown. Let me get this right. Threw two touchdown passes, ran a touchdown, blocked a punt.
Wow. Did it all.
Bugs Bunny.
Made like 22 tackles.
Oh,
holy crap.
Yeah. Big write-up in the Arkansas Gazette. Yeah, one of the most outstanding games. But let me tell you something about David. David averaged, it's hard to believe, playing as a linebacker in high school. I think he averaged, like, his tackles average was in the 20s.
That's wild.
He'd average making 24, 25 tackles a game.
That's wild, man.
To this day, David holds the record at Arkansas State University for the most interceptions in one game. He intercepted three interceptions in one game.
Wow.
As a linebacker.
Didn't know that.
Wasn't a defensive back.
Yeah, a linebacker.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh.
And he made them all over the field.
He's versatile then.
Made them here and here and here. That game probably was one of the most outstanding games that I can ever remember as one individual.
I was going to say that may be one of the top individual performances we've ever had. I didn't even know that. I'm glad you recollected that, because that holy smokes, to score on 3 times 2 different ways, and then to have that against obviously a top-notch team like that. Yeah,
sure did. Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
My goodness. Well, Coach, it's 10 o'clock, so we're about an hour past our normal deadline that we're going to stop this. So it may be time for us to call it a day on this. But I just want to say thank you for taking the time to come out here. Like, obviously retired, you could be doing anything you wanted to, but you took the time to get up. And you were here early. I knew you would be. You coaches, I know you guys.
That's okay.
I knew you would be. Me personally, I love you. I always have. You know that.
Love you guys.
Same here.
We respect
Same
you.
Here.
I speak for the entire community when I say that we all have always looked up to you, and you've touched countless lives in this community. And I'm glad you didn't take those administration jobs. I'm glad that more money didn't talk enough to you, because I think I'm a better man because of it. So
thank you, guys.
We appreciate you.
Coach Walls.
Absolutely.
That's Coach Dick Walls. Guys, we got one more commercial break. We'll come back.